Sheriff Daniels, how long have you been living and enforcing the law on the border?
Since 1984.
Since 1984. And what have you seen in the way of progress or lack of progress, say in the last 10 years on the border in enforcing the border security?
Excuse me. In the last 10 years, it's pretty much been status quo. Over the last 20 years, when the plan of the 90s, which I spoke about prior to you coming in, there was some improvements made with the infrastructure due to the fact we have 2 port of entries in our county. We went from a dozen agents that we all knew by first name to 1,300 Border Patrol agents in our county. And then 200 port of entry folks for ICE and Customs that work there. So 1,500 federal agents for our 83 miles. So about 20 years ago, we saw 20 to 15 years ago is when we saw the big increase in security between our ports.
So you haven't seen a lot of progress in the last 10 years?
In the last 10 years, it's been pretty much the same as we saw when the first plan went into place.
Would you agree with me, contrary to what Ms. Weisberg-Stewart just said, that fences do matter? Fences that are enforced matter, such as we've seen in San Diego?
Yes, they're deterrent.
As long as they're enforced. It's not easy to breach, by the way, Ms. Weisberg-Stewart, when people are there to make sure they don't breach the fence. By the way, the Israelis do a tremendous job at that kind of work. Ms. Cabrera, do you believe that fences matter?
Yes, sir, I do. They act as a choke point. It's a good tool for us to use. Granted, people will find a way over it, but like you said, if there's someone manning it, if there's someone available to push them one way or the other, we will be able to eventually stop them.
But would you also agree, and you, Sheriff, that we now have technology, some of which was developed in Iraq, such as a Veda radar, where we could achieve 90% effective control and 100% situational awareness. It's a matter of assets, strategy, and funding.
I do agree. As long as we have the boots on the ground to help enforce that, it would work.
Sheriff?
I would agree too, Senator, and the other thing I would add to that is the federal government's been successful with their plan of the 90s for the populated and port areas of the southwest border. I would take those successes along with the technology and the fencing, the infrastructure, the good people from Border Patrol. If you combine all that to take care of the rural parts of the southwest border, it'd be very beneficial.
So, Howard, with all the other aspects that you were talking about, economies and opportunities in these countries and all those things, is a vital long-term in the equation. In the short term, visiting your facility, it's still pretty easy to get across our border. Would you?
Yes, sir. I would say that Agent Cabrera, when he talks about a choke point on the fence, is exactly way to describe it, because you're pushing people in different directions. And we've had people use chop saws that cut the fence. We have many people breach the fence, but the truth is it does slow them down. The key point is that you have to have people there to apprehend them. We have a neighbor, John Ladd, who has counted 47 trucks that have breached through their fence through chop saws. One of them was apprehended because it broke down. Those vehicles could be stopped and apprehended if there were enough people there, because the fence does slow them down and it does make them more vulnerable as they try to cross. But without the proper personnel, it's difficult to enforce it.
Agent Cabrera, today Congressman Salmon and I introduced legislation concerning our national monuments. There's enormous difficulty on some federal lands, such as our national monuments, to get equipment and people in and out of those areas. Would you agree that that's a significant challenge? Therefore, it becomes a funnel for drugs and people?
Yes, sir. Exactly correct. We have a lot of problems accessing certain lands down there where we're at, and obviously the smugglers don't play by the same rules. They're going to go, regardless if you tell them they can come in or out of this area, they're going where they want to go, and we have to go around certain areas, and it puts us behind the eight ball.
And they know that.
And they know that. They know exactly what we can and can't do where we can and can't go, and they exploit it. They're very sophisticated in how they work.
Isn't it possible, Sheriff Daniels, right now from Mr. Buffett's facility where you can see the individuals across the border that are guiding the drug traffickers and human traffickers as they come across the border, and then once they get across, there are still members of the drug cartels up on the mountains directing them forward to move the drugs and people. Isn't that the situation as it exists today on our border?
Yes, it is, Senator.
And it seems to me that Mr. Brand's complaint then is legitimized by this situation because people who live in cities and other parts of the country are not subjected to their lands being violated. And one case, as you know, tragic case of a rancher being shot and killed. So I guess in summary, I'm asking you, this is a problem that can be solved with assets, with a strategy, with people, with fences and technology. And those who say, well, we just can't do it, obviously are incorrect, because every nation has the obligation to have a secure border. I guess I'd begin with you, Howard, and maybe you, and I'll be glad to ask all the witnesses for their comment on that.
Well, I would say it absolutely can be done, but of all the things that you mentioned need to be deployed, and they need to be deployed in the proper amounts and limits, and but if they are deployed with the correct strategy, I think it's like any law enforcement objective. It can be achieved if you can put the right pieces together and right parts into motion. No, sir, it's not the case today.
Sheriff?
I would say one thing, and I do agree with you, Senator McCain, when it comes to it can be done, but we have to have the political will to do that and understand that border security is a mandate and not discretionary by some. The redefinition of the plan of the 90s, which I spoke about earlier in my testimony, I think is very important to look at, and also to maximize already the current allocated resources to Border Patrol and see what we actually need to put on the border and look at that rural aspect of it. I think we can get a lot of progress.